Chris with Geometry here. Today I'm reviewing the Break RAK. If you hadn't heard of it before, it's a contraption that mimics the action that a rack would have when you break against it. I had thought originally it was for an 8-ball rack, but when I put an 8-ball rack on here, it was too heavy. It was about 5 pounds plus, and a 9-ball, 9 balls, is about 3 pounds, and this is also about 3 pounds, give or take. This is, it's solid. You can feel that it's heavy and it's really well made. It has a little bit of action in here. I don't know, that's certainly intentional, but it's sort of neat, and it has what looks like a 1 ball on the end. Now, what happens is, with all this other stuff, that allows you to set it up on the table and keep it in position so that you can break over and over again and not have to re-rack the balls. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the time to set it up, and you can see generally what goes into setting it up as well as how long it takes. It's pretty easy. What we're going to do first is pick between these three. Of course, this is for a 7-foot, 8-foot, and 9-foot table. I got an 8-foot table, so we're going to take this, and these get slotted into here, like so. And then this just gets bent onto the table. I found at first I was kind of putting it onto the edge here and bending it in, but I've found through experience I actually put it away from the table, leaving a gap here, and then I just sort of pull this in, and that seems to work faster. And then what we do here is we put Break RAK side down, and the bungee goes here. If it's the first time you're using it, you'll have to set where these go in order to get the head ball on that second diamond line. But what's suggested is to be about 2 inches off of the center diamond. Lock this in place. I like to tuck it underneath this, and then we would just pull until that's taut there in place. And now we have it set in place. I also have cut some extra felt. They gave me a little bit of felt with it. I cut some more of my own, but this is just to go underneath where it's touching the table so that it damages my felt a little bit less, because now we're able to break over and over again. So that's it. It's set up. As long as you're not using the radar, it's ready to use. I'm just going to break a couple times so you can see the general action it provides. Now I'm going to do what I've been working on lately is more of a jump break. I'm going to do a video on that at some point, but you can also try to get the action of the ball to hop, and that's pretty nice. What I've also found is this has been able to transfer to my general break. So some people would say, well, is the repetition you're doing on the Break RAK applying to a regular rack? And although it doesn't mimic the action of how the balls will spread, I am finding the position of the cue ball I'm doing much better on because of my practice with the Break RAK. Now, if you're somebody who's interested in the second ball break, they do recommend a strategy where you end up sort of turning the whole mechanism this way, and you end up, I'm not going to set it up perfectly here, but you end up getting it on this line here. And I think that it could work, but if you're practicing this shot, you're going to have a lot of times, you're going to hit this and it's going to slide into this here and it's going to pop off the table. So I would think you'd have to sort of be a bit more careful as you break with this strategy, but it is possible to set it up for the second ball break. And for a bit more money, you can add the radar system. And this is really fun because it gives you that instant feedback of how you're breaking. And it's been fun for me because over the month I've been using it. Now, my initial break speed is more typically around 18 miles an hour, 18 and a half. But since I've been using the system, I've actually gotten my break speed closer to 19 and a half, 20 miles an hour on a more regular basis. So it's fun to see me improving, and it's fun to get that instant feedback on your break. So what do I think of it all? Well, first and foremost, I'm going to talk about the Break RAK itself. The Break RAK itself, this metal contraption here it's awesome. It really is. I don't think there's anything else on the market that can do what it does, and I don't know why you would reinvent something else. This is perfect in terms of something you can break against. So the Break RAK itself is well machined, it's precise, it's beautiful, it's really, really nice. The contraption holding it in place has a different feel to it. And it's not a problem. It's just, you notice right away that it's stuff you could get at a hardware store. You've got bungees, you've got fiberglass posts, some rubber sheething, and a PVC like pipe here. And again, that's not a problem, but it's the first sign that you notice that this isn't a really big company that's been taken over and then like over designed. This is all that's needed. I think it probably works well because it can customize to like your different size tables when they're like an 8.5 foot, or maybe like the 7 foot tables can come in a couple different sizes. So this allows it to adapt to any table in a really nice way. And I don't know what would happen if a bigger company took this over, but I have a feeling it wouldn't have this feel like hardware store feel. They'd probably up it a bit, but I don't find that necessary. The whole job is just to hold this in place and it works perfectly. So there's not really a problem with that. In terms of the radar, it's clear this is outsourced. This is made by Sport Sensors. I think they're more typically applied to like playing baseball, the speed of a pitch, or maybe the ball speed off the bat, or maybe for golf swings. But this is for pool, and they've dialed it down to be within the speed range. I think it's the minimum speed's like 9 miles an hour to like 30 miles an hour or something. And on that topic of miles per hour, I don't think you can reset this to be kilometers per hour. So that's something for the international friends to think about, that you can only read in miles per hour. But it does work really well. Another sign, it's not primarily designed for pool though. They add this rubber band on the back. I might just put a piece of like electrical tape here, but they add a rubber band because as you hit over and over again, the impact causes the case to become loose, the cover here, and it just like allows it to not pop off, and you can just touch it back in place. But it does the job, and it does the job really well. And I would definitely recommend, if you can, getting the radar with it. Now, if you upgrade to the Pro Edition, you get the case as well as the other two sizes for putting it on. In my case, it was a 7 foot and 9 foot table. The 8 foot came with the regular package, and whatever size table you originally ordered, you'd get the other two pieces. So you can bring this to any size table. This is nice for me because if I go to my league tables, I would need this version for the 9 footers that I play on. Now, in terms of the carrying case, I do wish it had like cutouts for each of these pieces, but it doesn't really matter, I guess, because you're just gonna kind of plop it in there and you're gonna close it up and away you go. Now, I mention this because this would fit if I took the time to unscrew these two, and unscrew this unit. I'd have to do that to get it to fit in here. And I just don't think I'm doing that. If this is set up like this, I'm just gonna carry this in. Now, I might put these in the case, but now I'm carrying this huge case around. I might just actually carry the post with that. In fact, I don't find the travel case particularly handy. Now, some of you may disagree if you're, for whatever reason, you actually do use it. What I would have preferred is actually something to make it wall mountable in my home. Something that maybe I could have like, I don't know, maybe something with 2 hooks and you just hook it on the wall. And that would make it more accessible to me, because right now, if I put it in the case, it actually feels like it's gonna stay there and I'm not gonna use it. I want this thing to be used on a more regular basis. And if you pack it away, you're just gonna not take the time to do it. You're gonna think an extra second before you do that. So for me, I would have been more interested in something wall mountable for these things as opposed to the travel case. But if I were to redo it, I still would have done it just to get these extra 2 pieces so I can bring it to any table. That should also help with resale. If for some reason you ever decide to sell it, you can now sell it to anybody who has whatever size table, and you're not locked into the size that you actually purchased it for. Something else I really enjoyed about my BreakRak experience so far is actually the company itself. There's a good chance if you buy one of these, you may be in touch with Charlie Bond himself. He is the creator and inventor and I guess owner of BreakRak. He made this thing. This is his brainchild. He's been in business for 22 years and he sold about 7,000 of these units. And what was really nice is, even though I was 7,001, I don't know if exactly, but I wasn't just another number where he just sort of sold. He still really cares about his customers, and he spent at least an hour and a half, 2 hours on the phone with me telling me extra tips about the BreakRak and how to use it, just talking about his story and where things came from and how it's developed over time, things like that. He's really personable, and I really enjoy knowing that the person who made this is, all my money is going straight to them, right? You're not going through a middleman like a CEO and all these other chains where the person who actually makes it, it doesn't actually really get the credit for it. So I like that about it. He also sent me his book, The Great Break Shot. I've been through that, and he's talked with me for a bunch of tips. One thing he wanted to stress with me over and over again was this phrase: rhythm and coordination will build your speed. He was really adamant to suggest that you don't want to just get up there and try to slam the balls over and over and over again. You want to be careful to make sure you build slowly over time. Start with your general break shot and don't push it, and just continue to get a little bit more each time you practice with it, and over time you'll see your speed develop. And that's what I'm starting to see. I'm only a month in, but I am very happy with the results that I have had practicing with the Break RAK. The biggest takeaway for me so far using the Break RAK actually isn't my miles per hour or like how to get the fastest speed. It's actually what happens to the cue ball. Now this has happened in sort of a way I didn't anticipate, but normally when you break, when someone breaks, the thing they're watching is the rack. They're watching where the balls go. But since there's no rack to look at as it spreads, the only thing you get to look at, the feedback your brain is getting, is where does the ball go? And what you start to realize is, and if you watch sort of a lot of people break after using the Break RAK, you'll notice a lot of people don't hit the ball head on. A lot of people hit the ball just off to the side, and it hits the rail. And what happens is, you hit the rail and come back, and maybe it stays somewhere center table and you're pretty happy with that. But people are only looking at, did a ball go in? Did a ball go in? But the reality is, if you hit the cue ball into the pack in such a way that the ball heads to the rail, you're only getting like 70% of the power. I don't know the actual number, but you're losing so much force that should be transferred into the rack itself. This really parallels the idea of a beginner pool player. Now, when you see a beginner pool player, they're just hoping the object ball goes in. So after they shoot a shot, their eye is watching, does the object ball go in the pocket? But any higher level pool player knows the main thing actually isn't if the ball goes in the pocket. We take that for granted. Of course the ball's going in the pocket. What we're really concerned about is, where does the cue ball go? What is our table position from there? And if you think about that analogy, on the break shot, so many people are still at the beginning level because they're just watching, do the balls go in the pocket, as opposed to where does the cue ball end up. When I started my break journey, I thought that getting the cue ball to bounce back center table was all about ball position. That is, you want, from the center table, you can actually shoot at all 6 pockets, so you maximize the chances you have a shot after the break. And while that is 100% true and important, what I've realized using the Break RAK is that actually when the ball pops back, what you're getting is the feedback that you have put every ounce of that shot into the rack. If you're shooting the ball and it's sliding to the rail, that's the feedback that's saying, hey, you left something on the table here. You only put about 70% of the power into the rack, and some of the power was left in the cue ball. And that's exactly what the Break RAK does. It gives you a hyper focus on what happens to the cue ball after you break. And if you're somebody who actually breaks to the side a lot, you're losing all that power, and you're going to notice it, and you're going to want to change your shot and work to try to get the rhythm and coordination in order to hit the ball full and transfer maximum power to the head ball. It was quite expensive. The Break RAK with the radar and the Bluetooth and the case and the Pro pieces here was almost $800, which, yes, that's quite a lot of money. But if you're willing to shell out $800 for a stick, why not be able to shell out $800 for a set like that? Now, if you are just starting out and you're just getting into your break shot and trying to develop that, I'm going to recommend a different direction than buying the whole thing here and a fancy break stick. For the same price as a BK Rush, you can tone down this. So skip out on your case and your Pro package here. Just buy the regular Break RAK for your size table and buy the radar, but don't buy the Bluetooth. So just the standard Break RAK with the radar should go around $600. That's going to leave you about $200 to buy a lower end break cue. And the difference between these cues, although is significant, it's not as significant as you actually learning your break shot a lot better. So first, before you put the money into a very expensive break cue, take the time to get a regular break cue and the Break RAK system in order to improve your stroke to where you deserve a better break cue.